I should have let the mystery of that house stay a mystery. My name is Rachel, and for the first 6 months, I thought ID hit the urban apartment lottery. The place was a pre-war gem in a neighborhood I could barely afford, a spacious one-bedroom with original crown molding and hardwood floors that creaked with history. The rent was suspiciously low, but the landlord, a brusque older man named Mr. Henderson, had just waved a dismissive hand when ID asked why. Previous tenant broke the lease, their loss, had grumbled, shoving the paperwork at me. He gave me only one rule, a single sentence underlined twice in the lease addendum. The basement door is to remain locked at all times. It was a heavy, old thing, set into the wall of the kitchen, made of solid oak with a tarnished brass lock that looked a century old. I didn't think much of it. I had my own space, my own life. The door became just another piece of the apartment's quirky furniture. But there were small things, details I brushed off as the charming eccentricities of an old building. The air near the basement door was always a few degrees colder, a persistent chill that no amount of sunlight from the kitchen window could chase away. The lock, which I checked obsessively for the first week, would sometimes be found ever so slightly ajar, the brass tongue not fully seated in the strike plate. ID blamed the settling of the house, or my own forgetfulness, and the smell. Once a week, usually around 3 a.m., a faint, damp odor would seep from under the door, like wet earth and old roses. It was unsettling, but in a city full of strange noises and smells, it was easy to rationalize. I was living alone for the first time, after all. Nerves were to be expected. So what's the one rule you've been given that you're secretly tempted to break? Let me know in the comments, but trust me, after this you'll probably follow it. The subtle disturbances began to escalate. It started with the sounds. Not the usual groans and pops of an old building, but distinct, intentional noises. A soft, rhythmic scratching would come from the other side of the basement door late at night, like someone gently dragging fingernails down the wood. I'd lie in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs, telling myself it was mice or pipes. Then came the whispering. It was so faint I'd convinced myself it was just the wind whistling through a crack in a window frame I hadn't found yet. It wasn't words, not at first, just a sibilant hiss, a breathy static that seemed to coil through the apartment, always originating from the kitchen. I started avoiding the kitchen after dark, making do with a water glass on my nightstand. The atmosphere in the apartment thickened. The silence felt watchful. I'd catch movement in the periphery of my vision on a shadow, detaching itself from the deeper shadows near that door, shrinking back the moment I turned my head. The cold spot around the door began to spread, a glacial front slowly invading my home. I'd wake up shivering, my breath misting in the air, the digital clock on my bedside table reading 3:03 a.m. The smell of wet earth and roses would be overpowering. I called Mr. Henderson. His response was immediate and sharp. "Don't go near the door, Rachel. Just ignore it. It's an old house." He hung up before I could say another word. Ignoring it was becoming impossible. The whispers were starting to coalesce into something almost recognizable. A single word murmured by a dozen faint, desperate voices. They were calling my name. After a particularly bad night, where the scratching was so violent I thought the door would splinter, I reached my breaking point. I marched into the kitchen, my fear momentarily eclipsed by a surge of angry frustration. I was done being a prisoner in my own home. I grabbed the heaviest chair I had and jammed it under the doorknob. The second the wood made contact with the floor, the apartment fell utterly silent. The oppressive cold began to recede. The faint, rotten, floral scent dissipated. For 3 whole days, there was nothing. No whispers, no scratching, no phantom chills. I felt a wave of giddy, triumphant relief. I'd done it. I hadn't broken the rule. I hadn't opened the door, but ID asserted my control. I, D1. This moment of false safety was the most dangerous thing I've ever experienced. It lulled me into a sense of security. I started sleeping through the night again. I cooked meals in the kitchen. The chair remained under the knob, a silent sentinel I was proud of. The fear became a memory, a bad dream I was shaking off. On the fourth night, the silence broke. I was woken not by a sound, but by a sensation. The air in my bedroom was frigid. I could see my breath plumbing in the moonlight slicing through the blinds. And then I heard it. Not from the kitchen. From the hallway, right outside my bedroom door. A soft, wet, dragging sound. Something heavy was being pulled slowly down the hall. Scrape thump, scrape thump. My blood turned to ice. The chair. I deblocked the basement door, but I hadn't considered that I might have locked whatever was inside in here with me. The doorknob to my bedroom began to turn, with an agonizing, deliberate slowness. The lock ID installed held. I scrambled back against the headboard, pulling the covers up to my chin, a child's futile defense against the monster in the dark. The turning stopped. Then, from the other side of the thin wood, came the whispering. It was no longer a faint, distant thing. It was clear, a chorus of dry, rasping voices speaking in unison, right against the door. Rachel were out. The scratching started again, but this time it was on my bedroom door. I could see the wood vibrate with each deliberate stroke. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to stop, for morning to come. And then it did stop. The scratching ceased. The whispers faded. The cold began to slowly abate. I stayed frozen in place for what felt like hours, until the first rays of dawn painted my room in a weak gray light. Cautiously, trembling, I slid out of bed. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against it. Nothing. With a shaking hand, I unlocked it and pulled it open. The hallway was empty. My eyes darted to the kitchen. The chair was still securely wedged under the basement doorknob. The door was still shut. A sob of relief caught in my throat. Maybe it was over. Maybe my defiance had worked after all. I took a step into the hall, my bare foot landing on something damp and gritty. I looked down. A trail of dark, wet soil and crumpled, blood-red rose petals led from the kitchen, down the hall, and ended right at my bedroom threshold. The door I had locked from the inside hadn't kept anything out. It had simply let me know it had been visiting. And now, as I stand here telling you this, the one thing I know for certain is that the basement door isn't the thing I need to worry about locking anymore. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you felt that chill down your spine, you know what to do. Give this video a like, subscribe for more tales from the shadows, and let me know in the comments what you would have done in my situation. Stay curious, but maybe stay out of the basement.